Welcome into the Yards After College podcast powered by KSLSports.com. We're here for a week 11 edition of the pod, and alongside me, as always, is Sam Farnsworth. And we have a special guest this week, our BYU insider for KSLSports.com. You can hear him on KSL News Radio multiple times a week. You can read all of his stuff on the website, on our app. He's the one and only Mitch Harper. And we're having Mitch on today to talk about the third string quarterback of the New York Jets.
we have to round of applause. I know you'll fix that in post there, Kyle, but we're putting the round of applause in there to welcome Mitch in.
Of course. We have to add
sports media
the sound effect.
Well, thanks, guys. I'm excited to be on talking Zach Wilson. I can't wait to discuss this because it's been a wild ride for him, and excited to discuss it.
So, Mitch, I think the last time we had you on was probably 2 years ago. I think it was Zach's rookie year, actually, if I remember correctly. I don't know if we had you on last season.
It was 2021. It was 2021. I was driving to the Stanford Stadium in Palo Alto. I was on the freeway when I was talking to you, and we were discussing him, and it was kind of like a pivotal moment. I believe, if memory serves me right, they were getting ready for, gosh, I'm drawing a blank on who it was, but I remember where I was. I was in a car. I was in an Uber ride, and the guy in front of me was saying like, "Oh, you must really like the NFL." And I said, "Yeah," I said, "I like all things sports." And this Zach Wilson guy, over the Jets, explaining the whole story with him. But yes, it's been a minute, so I'm excited to be back on and discuss that because a lot has transpired with Zach, and his future seems kind of murky at the moment.
Yeah, so just to recap for anybody that doesn't know, I feel like, a day later, we're recording on Monday the 20th. Zach gets benched yesterday during the Jets' blowout loss to the Buffalo Bills. He plays all the way till about like the 3 or 2 minute mark of the second or of the third quarter, that is. And then Tim Boyle comes in, finishes out the rest of the game. The Jets end up giving up another field goal, and they lose 32-6. And then earlier today, Robert Saleh came out and confirmed some reports from this morning that Zach is going to be benched for their game on Black Friday against the Dolphins. Tim Boyle is going to get the start. Trevor Siemian, my gosh, Sam, your former quarterback with the Denver Broncos is still around. He's going to be the backup there for the Jets.
Oh my
and
goodness!
Zach is going to be QB3 on Friday night.
My goodness,
Mitch, let's start off
here.
This
is wild.
Let's start off with what has happened to Zach has played out on a huge national stage. Obviously, he's playing in the number one market in the country. Everybody's been talking about him for 3 years now. What, I guess, are your initial takes on kind of just what has transpired with Zach, where he's at now compared to where he was a few years ago coming out of BYU as the number 2 pick?
He came nowhere close to living up to that lofty draft pick, of course, being number 2 overall. And, he was elevated because of a very shallow COVID class. Even some of the late picks that got selected out of BYU in that 7th round in 2021 were kind of a byproduct of a shallow class that only had about 300 plus prospects, whereas in a typical year, you're dealing with 500 guys. And that was something that benefited Zach a lot. And he had 12 games of live snaps. And then he just goes to New York, and just the volatility of that franchise, expecting, because that number 2 pick was placed on his name, they instantly expected playoffs and contending for AFC titles like they once did with a rookie quarterback in Mark Sanchez. That just wasn't the case. This was a total teardown, rebuild to the studs with this Jets franchise. And you felt like with Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, they were all going to be in lockstep and in unison and move at the same pace together, and they would build it all together. But it just hasn't happened. And I think that Zach, the moment last year when he lost the press conference, just been an uphill battle for him, to where the perception, everything that he does wrong, he's instantly the scapegoat, because And I think that Zach has played poorly. He doesn't probably deserve to be one of the 32 men in the planet that's starting an NFL franchise. He just doesn't. What he's done thus far doesn't warrant being a starter. But for the Jets, he's probably still at this juncture maybe the best option. But it just seems like it's just to the point where something has to move. And that's why I think it's probably for the best that the Jets do just make this change, because it's not getting any better for Zach. It's only going to hurt his prospects more. And I think that this change probably had to happen.
I agree with you, Mitch. And, I remember back on draft day when Zach was on the stage with all the other first round draft picks. And just, I don't know if you guys remember, he looked uncomfortable, like for how confident and even cocky he was coming out of BYU. And I think rightfully so. He put some amazing footage on tape. He had that amazing pro day. But for how great of a prospect he was coming into the draft, as soon as he stepped onto that draft stage with all the other prospects, he already kind of looked like he felt out of place. And I'm not saying that was an indication of things to come, but that right there was kind of like, oh man, is he ready for this, especially in New York? And, fast forward to now, obviously we know Zach has dug some of his own ditches here in the NFL. He's had to go through some tough learning processes, of how to be a leader, of how to be a good locker room guy. And I think he's been able to somewhat get out of that over the past year plus. I think Aaron Rodgers has helped him do so. But here we are. Yes, I agree that he hasn't developed into the quarterback that the Jets has hoped he could develop into. He still shows us signs of the talent that he has, and I feel like he still has an opportunity to be a starting quarterback. I just don't think it's with the Jets. So, Mitch, and you already mentioned some of that, but Mitch, why move on at this point? Because you watch the game on Sunday and Boyles there was no difference in the way that offense was moving with Boyles in compared to Zach. And I'll be honest, I was kind of surprised. I thought Zach would be the starting quarterback again because, like you said, he's the best option.
I think that with Zach, it just bottomed out at Buffalo this past weekend to where it's almost like because Buffalo's a team that's kind of in flux. I mean, people were ready to say the window is closed for Buffalo after that disaster they had on Monday Night Football to Denver. You just thought, Buffalo is a team. If you're going to get them, it's now. And to play that poorly in a rivalry game, in a division game, it's been a common theme when there's like this window of chance for Zach to cement himself as the guy. The offense is just an utter disaster. Like last year when they lost at New England. And it's just that I think that it's just one of those deals where the Jets, they don't believe in him anymore. And I think that, Zach's confidence, I would imagine, has got to be pretty rattled here. And, at BYU, the saving grace for him was that he had the undying allegiance and support from the coaching staff. Like Kalani Sitake staked his job on the name of Zach Wilson, because when they went 4-9 in 2017, he begged, borrowed, and dealed to Zach Wilson and Lisa Wilson and Mike Wilson, to have their son come to BYU, even though they didn't recruit him much because Ty Detmer never really showed any sort of interest. And Kalani staked his job on Zach that he was going to turn it around, and they did. They picked the right spot to get him as the starting QB his true freshman season. And in that 2019 campaign, he was up and down. I mean, it was not to the lows that we're seeing in the NFL, but man, there were games where you're thinking, this doesn't look good. You're losing to Toledo. You lost to Northern Illinois. There were some disastrous performances to where Aaron Roderick's inbox and email is just getting flooded with, don't start this guy heading into the COVID year. He's terrible. And BYU fans were done with him, and they still continue to stick with him. And it paid off in a great way with a cobbled up COVID schedule. And he showed that, rocket of an arm, and he had one of the best offensive lines in college football with, a COVID season. So, Zach's it wasn't a perfection. When people put these, barstool videos of, man, he was amazing at BYU. And yes, he was very good. He's one of the all-timers. That single season in 2020 was incredible. But I also saw games where Zach is putting up only 3 points against San Diego State. You're going, what on earth just happened here? So this is kind of just what Zach is. And it's amplified now at the NFL stage where everyone is elite. No one's facing, COVID restrictions, and no one's, a team called Texas State. I mean, it's just the level of competition. It's just far exceeds maybe what he excelled at BYU. And yes, he had some moments against Tennessee and USC, but even in those games, it was, BYU was at a standstill offensively for about 55 minutes against Tennessee, and then it came to life in the last 5 minutes. So I just think that Zach needs a new change of scenery. The thing about him that gives me hope that he's going to turn it around eventually in his NFL career, because he was a high draft pick, that means a lot of teams are going to say, I can be the franchise to change him. And two, he's going to put in a lot of work that gets teams to want to still invest and say they can change him and turn him around. So I just feel like it needs to be a new change of scenery. And I hope that happens sooner rather than later, because it just hasn't worked in New York.
So, Mitch, you've got Zach, who's playing under his second offensive coordinator, and albeit one that's more experienced than his first one, his first couple years in the league with LaFleur. But I think that at moments this season, we've seen Hackett, utilize some of Zach's skill sets that we saw coming out of college. I want to ask you kind of a leading question. Do you see some of those things like being on the offensive side of the like play calling that are affecting Zach, or has Zach like just regressed in certain ways? Where have you seen him improve from where he was at BYU? Like where's the fault, I guess? Is it that the coaches aren't utilizing his skill set accurately? Because we saw him like that Kansas City game on Sunday Night Football, a month and a half ago, where they were rolling him out. He was making some plays with his legs, getting out of the pocket. I feel like is, where some of Zach's best plays have come from when he's rolling out. But then you've seen where they haven't run him a ton, and he had some injuries early on in his career because of those types of plays. But do you think it's a matter of Zach not living up to that skill set, or it's the coaches haven't been able to utilize him correctly?
I think it's the fact that, he got thrown into the fire for year one and he wasn't ready. So I think that he didn't live up to the skill set. And now it's gotten to a point because there's so much fear with him, and he conjures up such, strong emotions, even from Jets legends like Joe Namath are calling for his head a few weeks back. I just feel like this staff is just so frightened to let it kind of unleash and let it rip with Zach Wilson. They're always so conservative with him, and I gotta imagine it's just impacted his confidence. And I feel like he's done all the right things in what he said. I think there's been a growth in maturity for Zach, and I think that maybe he's made inroads in winning over that locker room a little bit more than in years past, where it felt like, this past summer, everyone was just so publicly excited because, Aaron Rodgers is incredible. He's a Hall of Famer, but just the overwhelming, narrative from players that are on the Jets, like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we got a quarterback, changing the profile pictures. Like anytime that this guy has had weakness, Zach Wilson, they are the team, the players, the coaches, everyone in that around that organization is ready to turn on him. They were ready to anoint Mike White as this amazing quarterback last year. What's Mike White doing this year? I mean, they had T-shirts for that guy. The players on the Jets. That's where I think BYU fans get so salty and in their feelings about Zach, and I don't know why they do. It's not like, yes, I get it. You want to see a BYU quarterback have success, but let's call it what is. Zach struggled. But I think where people get frustrated is just how they are, unlike so many quarterbacks in the NFL that get all these opportunities. Like look at Josh Dobbs. He bounced around everyone. Now the Vikings are saying he's amazing. Another BYU tie there with Jaron Hall. But I just think this public, like, throw Zach Wilson down. Like Rodney Harrison, media analysts are saying, yeah, but he's terrible, right? Like you just watch the film, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's terrible. Like that's where I think there's this like loyal, staunch defending of Zach from BYU fans. But let's be honest, he just hasn't been good. I mean, that Pro Football Focus grade from the weekend, 32.2 passer rating. I mean, it's just brutal. He's not an NFL starting quarterback right now, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen for him. He might be a career backup. I mean, maybe he could be a Ty Detmer. Maybe he could be, a guy that's just a Chad Henne, where he's like 12, 13, 14 years, because he's that type of guy. He's smart. He loves the playbook. He loves to dive into film, but I just don't see anything that says he's an NFL starter right now. And that's why I'm okay with the Jets saying, time to move on. Like, we got to make a different change. He's not in our long-term plans. So just do it now and see if you can get a spark from someone else.
Yeah, certainly not in the long-term plans when he goes from starting quarterback to third string. I think that says everything about the direction the Jets and Zach Wilson are headed. But yeah, he he's got. Yeah, I wonder if he's been um, irreparably damaged a little bit in his experience in New York. We go back. You talked a little bit about the teammates making the Mike White T-shirts. Zach said some things that turned his teammates against him, and those types of things will follow you throughout your career. I think some of it's been healed and repaired thanks to Aaron Rodgers and all the good things that he's come out and said about Zach as a teammate. I think some of his teammates have come around and in more support of him. I feel like there's more support across the league for Zach than maybe there was before. You see other opposing quarterbacks at the end of games with the handshakes. We saw it on Sunday with Josh Allen. Just how you can tell they're giving him a meaningful message, whatever it is. We don't know what's being said, but they're kind of spending a little extra time encouraging Zach. I imagine they're encouraging him. They're trying to pump him up to keep him, hey, you still got it. Give it time, find the right fit, whatever it is they're saying. And that's where we're at. Zach's got to move on now because it's going to get worse if it doesn't. So I'm hopeful, not that I'm sitting here trying to rah for Zach Wilson, but just for his future, I'm hopeful that the Jets will make the decision just to release him. Let's just move on, cut ties, let Zach find a new place sooner than later. Having said that, Mitch, where do you think, I'm not trying to say a specific team necessarily, but if one stands out or a coach stands out, where do you think, what kind of offense do you think is the right fit for Zach Wilson in the NFL where he could thrive and potentially succeed as a starting quarterback?
He has to be in an offense where, he has full support from the coaching staff. First off, I just feel like, and that's just tough to do in the NFL. It's just not the world that the NFL operates in, because he's damaged that so much to where no one is going to give him the benefit of having an entire franchise handed to him like he got the first year with the Jets. I feel like Zach is a guy that he's got to be in an offense that's going to take a lot of risk, where there's a willingness to stretch the ball downfield because his arm talent is incredible. I always go back to when, he was in his first practice as a BYU football player. It was incredible how he was throwing the ball. I was even in January 2018. I was at Draper, the soccer city off 123rd South in Draper.
Yeah.
And he was in a passing clinic. They're doing some winter work. Him and Puka Nacua were working together, and they were doing some pitch and catch together. Puka is in high school. Zach's just barely enrolled for a week at BYU, and these two were just incredible. And I'm thinking, man, this kid is going to be outstanding. I also thought, wow, if BYU could get ever a guy like Puka Nacua, if he didn't have, at the time he was going to go to USC, and sure enough, both those guys, ended up being amazing at BYU. But you saw the talent back then, and but I just feel like his confidence, and he's a guy that thrives on those deep shots, those big plays, the willingness to just create something on the run. That's what he can do, and he hasn't been given that autonomy to do that. I just feel like you're never going to see that again for him with an NFL team, where he's going to be kind of pigeonholed to be, do not make this mistake, do not do this. Because that affordability, that window is gone now that you're going to be on your second team. When you were the first hotshot rookie, there's that willingness to kind of go through some growing pains, but it got amplified because the Jets are so toxic with their fan base and their culture, and they're so impatient in that market, and the media attacks. I mean, they I get it. Like, you got to have a hard hitting media, and I think we can probably do better in Salt Lake with that. But I just feel like there's been some of that where it was like a personal attack to go get answers from Zach Wilson, and he succumbed to those pressures last year, and he's done a little bit better this job. But yeah, I just feel like I wish I had a better answer as to where he fits, because
right.
I think what the saving grace is that there will be coaches and teams that say, like, maybe I could be the one to replace him, because it seems like that happens all the time with high NFL draft picks, and maybe he can get another crack.
All right, Mitch,
I
last
think you're
question
right
for
about
you.
the trust. I was just going to say, I think you're
Go
right
ahead.
about the
Go ahead,
trust,
Sammy.
Mitch. It's unfortunate because I think Zach's at his best when he can freestyle a little bit more and go off his natural instincts. We've seen that a few times with the Jets, and yeah, you're right. I don't know that he's got that trust from coaches or will ever get that trust again. That's too bad.
Hey, there's always the XFL, right? You can have
Oh
all the
man,
trust in that. I'm just kidding.
puke.
Mitch, last thing for you. I'm gonna put the pressure to you. I'm gonna put your feet to the fire. I know we're a few months away from this, but in March, Zach Wilson is with what team in the NFL?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'm trying to think here. What would be the team that Zach Wilson ends up with
Raiders.
in March? I'd love to see the Raiders, but just like the Jets, it's the same type of deal. It's toxic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a toxic. Unless they had Jim Harbaugh. I hope they get Jim Harbaugh as the head coach. Then I'd feel a little bit better about that circumstance. You know, that's a. I wish I had a
It's a
better
tough
answer
one.
on that.
I have an answer here for you, and I want to get your
Hey, well,
take.
I've always felt like I'd like to see Zach with the Chiefs. Just be a backup quarterback
Oh,
with a franchise that
Yep.
Andy Reid loves the BYU guys. There will be zero pressure on Zach ever to be QB1 unless, Mahomes went down. I would just love that spot where he goes off the grid for a while, but yet he's there and he's developing and he's got a franchise that knows Kalani Sitake. They love Kalani. They love the BYU way and they loved what he did at BYU and they see the potential and there's that relationship that's deeper than surface level when it comes to knowing his story. I would love the Chiefs from that side of things because I think there would be a lot more patience given to him. Because, Andy Reid, every single year, he's coming out to Provo. He's very close with Kalani Sitake. And, last year he was at a BYU football game on his bye week. Andy Reid still loves his alma mater. And I would love that spot, from the BYU ties and just giving Zach low pressure situation and to learn from the greatest in the game behind Patrick Mahomes.
That was my
and
team.
Patrick Mahomes
You
likes
got it.
Zach Wilson. Patrick Mahomes likes Zach Wilson too. He said as much in one of his post game interviews. He's been watching him since BYU, so it would be great to have a quarterback in
Yeah.
front of him that supports him and wants to mentor him as well.
Yeah. And how many comparisons have we heard throughout, Zach's, last 4 or 5 years of, oh, Patrick Mahomes, this. I mean, heck, the Cougars ran that Chiefs play, Mitch, where, Zach was dumping
Yes,
the ball off. I mean, like, there's so many
against
ties there.
Houston.
It would be fun. Yeah, it'd be great. Well, Mitch,
It would be great. It
I
would
know
be
that.
great, and it would be better than the Mormon Manziel name that he had for a while. I don't want to see it be a Manziel situation for Zach. I hope he can turn this thing around and make it a better story because BYU guys at quarterback in the NFL, it just you could probably go to most schools and say it doesn't really work out, even like Ohio State until CJ Stroud recently. Not much hit rate when it comes to QB. It's tough to succeed when only 32 men get these jobs. So it's hard for any school to produce a high success rate, but I know Cougar fans are just craving for another Steve Young type story in this league. And maybe it can be Zach, maybe it's Jaron Hall, maybe it's someone else down the road. But Zach, I think, it was the one guy that gives them the hope that he could become that one day.
All right, Mitch, you've got probably, let's be honest, we've got one game left in your BYU football season to cover, and you've got quarterback controversy there on the BYU beat. What can you tease for BYU fans that are listening for your coverage coming up this weekend?
Oh, it's going to be a lot of fun in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Going to be covering BYU, Oklahoma State. Should be a good game. I think Oklahoma State probably will win. They got the Big 12 championship game in their sights, but we'll have great coverage from Stillwater. And if BYU does lose, it's countdown to 2024, and already I've got my boards, my rosters, my depth charts, personnel names to watch, some way too early NFL draft prospects for BYU in 2024 and beyond. So yes, we will have you covered wall to wall. Like when Monday, if BYU loses this Saturday, like I'm kind of just juiced for 2024 already. Like let's go. Let's get to media days. Like I feel like I'm already going to be in midseason form for 2024. I've been putting together my rosters and kind of personnel sheets for a couple weeks now, and kind of identifying who might be the transfer portal guys. So yes, it's safe to say, if you want to know all things BYU, I am your guy. I feel pretty confident about that. So I'll have a lot of great content, exit stuff, with players and coaches, kind of summarizing what's transpired this season. But hey, if they get a win and they shock us all, then it's bowl season, and that's a lot of fun too. There's that component as well. So it'll be a lot of fun stuff. There's no shortage of storylines with BYU football, and this offseason looks to be pretty jam packed.
I am very confident as well that Mitch is the source. If you're a BYU fan, you got to be following Mitch. Mitch, I have one more quick hit for you. Since we do talk about locals in the NFL, I have to ask you, on the current BYU football roster, who is the next player to get drafted into the NFL?
Well, Kingsley Suamataia, I think, is going to be the easy pick. Kingsley has struggled a little bit at times this year, like everyone with the offensive line for BYU, but I think that Kingsley's the type of guy that'll show up in a combine setting and he will just blow the socks off people. I mean, every single practice I've been to for BYU football this year, there's at least one or two NFL scouts. And after the practice concludes, they are just zeroing in on offensive line coach Daryl Funk to probably talk about Kingsley Suamataia. I mean, he is a freak of nature. He's the type of guy that'll do like a 3-cone drill. He'll do in some record time, and they'll go, he's 6'6" at 315. Like, this is insane. And teams will probably say, I gotta take him in the first round. Like, he's that type of guy, even though probably coming out of this season, maybe he's more of a third-round guy based on some of the film and production. So, but I think Kingsley's definitely going to be drafted. I think Eddie Heckard, cornerback from Weber State and BYU this year, I think he's got to find a way to get in the league. He's going to be a little bit undersized, but that guy is a player. Eddie Heckard is a good one. I'm curious to see what happens with Tyler Batty, defensive end. I don't think he's been as productive as I think he would have liked this season, and clearly the stats show that. He's only got 3.5 sacks this year, but I think that, his physical makeup, 6'6", 270. He's lost a little bit of weight this year. He's a little bit lighter, a little more muscle mass to his frame. I think that, it kind of looks the part, and I think he'll test well. I think he's an underrated athlete, but that hasn't showcased well at BYU. But that's more of a projection base where it's like late round, undrafted free agent territory for Tyler Batty. And then maybe Ben Bywater at linebacker if he officially moves on. I kind of feel like that's where it's trending for him. Maybe he's a late round guy. So I think there will be some, and we've seen historically the last 5 to 7 years in the Kalani era, BYU hits well with NFL guys and particularly undrafted free agents. So there will be some names again, but Kingsley leads the pack, that's for sure.
He's Mitch Harper, the number one BYU insider that you can find anywhere. This man has BYU magazines and game guides for decades on end. He's got he's an encyclopedia of the Cougars. That's all I have to say about Mitch. You can find him on social media at Mitch_Harper. Mitch, as always, appreciate your time. Thanks for hopping on.
You bet, guys. It is a disease when you lay it out that way. I have no hobbies. I have no life except talking with you guys. It's one of my escapes during the football season. So thank you, guys.
All right, Sam, that was a great conversation with Mitch. And we're gonna have to have him on again before the draft to talk a little bit more about some of these prospects. Probably early next year we'll have Mitch back on to do a little insight onto, he loves the NFL draft just as much as we do, so I think the insight would be great. But
yeah,
let's take a quick break, and
awesome.
we'll come back. We'll finish talking about Week 11, all the other things non-Zach Wilson, and I'm excited to hear your 3 stars as well. All right, Sam, we're back with the Yards After College podcast powered by KSLSports.com. And I think it's time. I think it's the appropriate moment in the show for us to kick things off on the second half of this beautiful episode that we've had today with your 3 stars. What do you think?
Let's do it. Might as well, and last week Zach
might
was
as
one of my
well.
stars.
Might as well. We might let's just do it. Like I feel like some of these weeks I'm getting you where you're coming in on fire and you're like, okay, we're gonna have 2 honorable mentions, and like today you're just like, yeah,
Oh,
you know, I'm
I've got
tired.
some.
I'm tired
I've got
after
some
a hard
fire.
day of week 11 football.
I've got some fire. What deserves a star all by itself is, did you see all the shots at the end of that Broncos game of Garrett Bowles on the sideline? I was like, yeah,
Oh yeah.
Garrett, getting some
Garrett
getting
is one
some
of
some
yeah.
TV love.
He's one of the best like guys to get on camera after an emotional win, right? Like after that
Yes.
Chiefs game, he's running off the field and he's like trying to make sure Russell Wilson's like coming with him. He's like, "Come on, man," like they're running off together. I kind of like that duo. Like he's like best buddies with Russell Wilson now.
Yeah. Well, he should be. I mean, or Russell should be at least. I mean, he needs all the help he can get. But Garrett, shoot, the Broncos. Not, I don't want to turn this into a Broncos segment, but
That was
wow,
last week.
impressive turnaround. Let's see if it keeps rolling. But there are no Broncos that get a star this week. Zach Wilson does not get a star this week. And I'll add one more thing on the Zach Wilson thing. I'm seeing a lot of support for him on social media by NFL players, uh, past NFL players. I've seen some support out. Anyway, yes, going back to what Mitch saying, find the right fit. He still has NFL life in him, but he's not a star. Not this week. I've got 3 stars, and I'm going to start with a star that should have been on my list last week and maybe even the week before.
Third star.
Okay, number 3 is the one and only Kyle Van Noy. I don't know why I didn't put him on my list last week, but this guy is just wrecking opposing quarterbacks. What is he doing? Like he sits there on his couch. I'm not saying he was just sitting on his couch, but it almost felt like the beginning of the season. He wanted to play football. It felt like football, at least football teams, didn't really want him for some reason. And he was like looking for opportunities, looking for jobs. He was making appearances on talk shows. He was getting his own podcast thing going, I think, even. And then finally he got the call. And what has he done since he's gotten the call? He just wrecks opposing quarterbacks. 6 sacks. He got another sack. I believe it's 6 sacks in 6 games now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but holy cow, Kyle Van Noy proving to everyone that he is still a very valuable asset to have on your defense.
The thing about Kyle Van Noy that surprised me, Sam, is we were talking about him, going into the season and especially in the off season, like we did our like whole like free agency breakdown and whatnot. And it just amazes me that like people weren't signing this guy back in March. Like it wasn't like he had a bad year with the Chargers. So I'm interested to see where these general managers are with their thinking, right? Because the Ravens, who have had, just a historically great defense over the last, 20, 30 years, right? They seemed like a perfect fit for him. So then when like he was visiting with them in the offseason, you're like, oh yeah, like Kyle Van Noy takes a visit to Baltimore. Like you're like, oh yeah, that like makes sense, right? Like he's gonna fit into there great. And then they didn't sign him. And then the season starts and you're like, my gosh. And then all of a sudden the injuries start piling up on that Baltimore defense. And then sure enough, they bring him back in, have him work out, and they sign there. Yeah, you were correct there. 6 sacks in what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. So he's averaging,
8 games.
almost a sack a game there, which is pretty impressive for a guy that didn't know what he was doing for, 8 months, which is crazy. And I still think that Kyle Van Noy, as we've seen on the field, has a lot left in the tank. And he said as much earlier this fall when he was honored at his high school in Nevada. And he was like, I'm just waiting for the opportunity, right? Like I've still got a lot more to prove. This man was a guy who was making highlight plays for a team that won the Super Bowl twice. And then for financial reasons, they get rid of him. Goes signs with the Dolphins. Again, financial reasons, they get rid of him after a season. And like I get the financial part of it because the NFL and salary cap, like it's not like other leagues, right? Like where the NBA, it's guaranteed money, or MLB. But just the production on the field, Kyle Van Noy, talk all the talk you want to talk. Kyle Van Noy is playing out of his mind. I love to see it. It's great, great star, Sam. I love it.
It'll be fun to see where the future takes him next season. All right, let's keep cranking them out, Kyle.
Second star.
Their second star right here is none other than and before I say who it is, I love the fact that in the broadcast they shouted out his high school. They shouted out his first D1 college, but not where he finished his college career. I love it. Jalen Warren from East High School in Salt Lake City. They shouted out East High School in the broadcast. 9 carries, 129 yards, a touchdown, 74-yard touchdown run in that game. Jalen Warren just continues to prove week in and week out that he deserves the ball in his hands, that he's a playmaker. He needs more opportunity. And not only that, like he is so physical. He is a great blocker for the run game or for pass protection or whatever situation you need him in as well.
Yeah.
He is so physical and good. Jalen Warren needs to emerge as RB1 in Pittsburgh. I get the Najee Harris thing that they've kind of got this 1-2 AB thing going on, but let's just move forward already. This guy needs the ball. Give him the ball. Let him do his thing. And then the best part about the broadcast is when they mentioned that he was from Utah State and he finished at Oklahoma State. But hey, he did have some productive years in Logan as well. But Jalen Warren, my goodness, the superstar for a Warren glass of shut the H up in fantasy football. Just leading my team to victory this week.
Hey, next game we just need a Snow College shout out, right? And then we're completing the
No
schools
kidding.
with Jalen
Right.
Warren. Shout out to the Badgers. Yeah, Sam, it's impressive. Like if you look at Jalen Warren compared to Najee Harris, like the way that they use them is really interesting. You look at the box score, and really Najee Harris hasn't had more than 19 carries this season, hasn't hit the 20 carry mark. And then Jalen Warren,
Mm-hmm.
he's only hit double-digit totes twice this season. And
Mm-hmm.
yesterday doesn't even hit 10 carries and has his best performance of his career. He ends up carrying the ball 9 times for 129 yards, touchdown, back-to-back 100-yard games for Warren, which is crazy. But then even going back to the first game in November, he has 88 yards on the ground. So you can see this trend where you're saying this RB1 thing in Pittsburgh. He's proving to be that home run hitter for the Steelers offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they're ever going to go away from Najee Harris, just because they're such different backs, and Jalen Warren is really that guy that they can utilize out of the backfield as a receiver as well. He's a little undersized, and that's where Najee Harris kind of has the benefit going for him, especially like in run blocking. I think is something that is interesting because the Steelers, it feels like they're one of those teams that's like trying to go back to like the old identity of what that team was about, right? Like the Steelers have traditionally been like a ground and pound kind of a team that's utilized their running game to set up the passing game. And we saw how beneficial that was with like Jerome Bettis, and like, how beneficial that was for like Ben Roethlisberger's career. Because like Ben, especially like in the later years, like there were some ducks getting thrown, right? Like that's a team that wins the game at the line of scrimmage. They win with good defense, sound football, good technique. And so I don't know if the situation is going to change based off of Jalen Warren's performances, just based off of the identity of who like Mike Tomlin is. But my gosh, if they can give him at least 10 carries a game, and then I think you mentioned it last week with the Stars, is like give him another like 5, 6, 7 touches as far as like a receiver is going, and give him around like the 15 to 20 touch mark during the game. No matter how you utilize him, that's where he's effective, right?
Yes, 100%. He fits the identity of a Pittsburgh Steeler to the T. So Get him the ball, whether it's in the pass game or the run game. That 15 to 20 touch range, I think, is where you want him at. All right, Kyle, my number one star is an example. Well, yes. Here, here we go. We're getting to it right here.
First star.
Number one star. Utah State quarterback Jordan Love. He deserves to be a star this week. It's been a little bit for him, but I'll tell you what, this is the example in the NFL of how to develop your next starting quarterback. And it's still far from over, but he started pretty good this season. He went into the valleys with some poor performances, and Packer fans were not very thrilled with it. Coaching staff probably wasn't thrilled at times, but they understood the process. They understood what they have. They know what they have. They know what they're investing in right now, and they're willing to take the time, the investment of time, which is very valuable in the NFL. But no one seems to know how to spend time. Instead, they're so impatient with developing players in any position, really, but especially at the quarterback position. They've got time on their side, I believe, and we're starting to see it. Jordan Love had the best game of his NFL career on Sunday in their 3-point win against the Chargers. 27 of 40 passing, 322 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I don't care what people say about passer rating. I like the passer rating stat. I don't like QBR. I don't understand it. ESPN made up their own little stat to go with it. QBR. Now you see it everywhere. Yep. Forget QBR. When you're looking at a quarterback, everyone who's listening, do not look at QBR in the NFL. Look at passer rating. I promise you, it's a pretty accurate stat. It's a weird number. It's weird how they come to it, but it's a pretty accurate reflection of how well that quarterback has played in a game and throughout a season. And his passer rating on Sunday, 108.5, is outstanding. And so just that means he's being efficient. That means he's making good decisions. That means the decisions he's making are being fruitful. They're productive. And so Jordan Love is taking those steps. It might be a slow process. It might be a painful process for Packer fans who are used to Hall of Fame quarterbacks, but give it the time, and I think it's going to pan out. And so I love what Jordan Love did on Sunday. He's deserving of my number one star.
And I love the fact that he led the game-winning drive there with a couple minutes to go in the fourth quarter.
And what a pass. What a pass.
The thing about it is, like, we know that Jordan Love has the arm, right? Like, he has the ability to make pretty much every throw. And I'd like to see them utilize the RPO game a little bit more, because I think that that's one of the things that's kind of lacking in that offense right now is the threat of Jordan. Like, I'm not saying like run the ball with him like 10 times a game, right? Like, but like the wrinkle needs to be there where 5 times a game, like Jordan Love is a threat to pull it and run the ball. And especially with their running back situation right now, Sam, Aaron Jones is hurt. AJ Dillon got hurt yesterday. It's like Jaden Reed was their number one rusher. Like that's a problem when your wide receiver is your number one rusher, right? Like it's either got to be a quarterback or a running back, in my opinion. And so I think they need to figure out the running back situation, because they need to take that pressure off of Jordan Love. And I think that, going into the year, you're like, okay, like Aaron Jones, like he's a good running back, even though he's getting a little bit older. He's shown that he can be the running back that's like, a top 10 running back in this league. That's what they need to figure out. If they can get a running back set up where, they can utilize a running back to, running the ball 15 times a game, get about 100 yards on the ground out of that guy, to be able to take some pressure off of Jordan Love, like that's going to open up so much for him, where he doesn't feel the weight of that franchise on his shoulders. And the fact that even where they're sitting at 4-6, that pressure on him this year, the mantle of Aaron Rodgers, all of those types of things, like the fact that they're sitting where they are 10 games into the season, I think is just remarkable. And we talked about this a few weeks ago. People were writing Jordan Love off too soon. And I don't think that we're crowning him right now either, but we're at the situation where like, hey, like this is the reason why you don't write the guy off yet. Like, let's see it play out for the rest of the season. You've got another year on his deal. You've got the ability to like have some patience. Like you said, time is on their side. And so Jordan Love, congratulations, first 300-yard passing game of his career. No interceptions, 2 touchdowns. Let's just continue to see these things stack every week.
Exactly. So there we go, Kyle. I've got those are my 3 stars this week, and there's no shortage of great performances by locals. Fred Warner had another awesome game.
Yeah,
Puka got back into the end zone. So there's always awesome talent out there from our state that's catching our eye. But those are the guys that I feel deserve the best recognition this
for
week.
sure. Also, Dalton Schultz, your fantasy
Yeah,
tight end right there, Sam.
he's 5 touchdowns now this year.
Gotta
Started
love.
slow, but
Yeah, gotta
CJ
love
Stroud is
the climb.
realizing he's valuable.
It's all about how you finish, not how you start, right, Sam? That's what the
Yep.
saying is. All right, Sam, we got to wrap this up because I know you got to go. But week 12, I mean, let's mention Monday Night Football tonight. Wrapping up week 11, we got an amazing game, Chiefs versus Eagles. But week 12, Sam, we've got Thursday, we've got Thanksgiving Day football, which is always a great national holiday to celebrate food, family, and football. 3 good games. We've got Jordan Love playing on Thanksgiving against the Detroit Lions, who have the best record they've had in forever, since 1962. And then we've got Black Friday. I was hoping we'd get a little Zach Wilson action on Black Friday, but no, we don't there. But Sam, what's the game that you're excited to watch this week? Is it a Thanksgiving Day game, or are you looking forward to something on Sunday or Monday?
Well, hold on, pause for a second because I accidentally clicked back on my schedule. Okay, here we go. I was looking forward to that Black Friday game because I love what the NFL is doing here. They're extending they already own Thanksgiving, right? They extended it about a decade ago by adding that 3rd Thanksgiving Day game by putting a night game. Brilliant decision. Keep the football going all day long into the night, on a holiday that's made for eating and watching football, really. But I love that they're just, hey, this works. Let's own Black Friday too. No one's working on that day. Let's throw in an afternoon game on Black Friday. I love that decision. So for that fact alone, I do like the Dolphins Jets game this week because it gives us another game before the weekend, 4 games before the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, that's not the game. I'm going to give you 2 games. I will give you a Thanksgiving Day game to watch for, and that's going to be the first one, the Packers Lions. I want to see Jordan Love against this Lions team that's been just so incredible this season. They also feature Penei Sewell on the offensive line there. So that's my Thanksgiving Day game. It's the first one. I'll be enjoying that while I'm getting some food ready. And then Sunday, I like the morning game between the Saints and the Falcons, the division rivalry. Let's see if the Saints can figure it out again, Kyle. And remember that when Taysom Hill gets 9 or more carries, they win the football game. Give him the ball.
I love it, Sam. I love it. I'm going to go with the Sunday afternoon game. I'm going to go with the Bills versus the Eagles. The Bills, I still don't know what to make of that team. They ended up getting a win over the Jets to get above 500, but still want to see what they're going to do with the new offensive coordinator for the rest of the year and Joe Brady. But playing the Eagles in Philadelphia, that's a tough game. Local guy, Taron Johnson, he is out with a concussion heading into that game. I want to see if he bounces back in time for that Sunday matchup in Philadelphia. But Dalton Kincaid, I want to see a little bit more Dalton Kincaid action there with the Bills.
Yeah.
And I believe Dawson Knox is getting close to returning. So I wonder if they go back to some 2 tight end sets as we head down the home stretch this season. But Dalton Kincaid over the last month has been outstanding for the Bills. And just want to see him be utilized a little bit more. They didn't throw the ball his direction as much as I would have liked to see them have against the Jets. So that's my game. Ma'am, before we sign off today, what can you tease for us on KSL Sports Live for this weekend?
Oh, it's all about the Thanksgiving football here. Thanksgiving weekend. We football day Thursday, football Friday. You've even got our Big Ten Saturday night on NBC is actually on Friday this week. So we've got football through the weekend. No more high school football here in the state of Utah. It doesn't matter. We got plenty to go with locally, as well as BYU and Utah State both trying to become bowl eligible on the final week of the regular season. See if it can't happen.
He's Sam. You can find him on all things social media at Samsworth_TV, and not just football. Okay. We can't write off all the other things that Sam's putting out. He's posting controversial highlight plays of basketball games as well. And we're slowly,
it was a foul.
We're trickling down into the end of football season, turning into basketball season. Basketball's ramping up now that we're in November. So be sure to follow Sam for all things, whether it be Jazz, BYU, Utah, you name it. Sam's got it for you. And be sure to check out KSL Sports Live on the weekend. You can follow me at Kyle Ireland. And be sure to follow us all on KSLSports.com and the KSL Sports app. Until next week, this has been the Yards After College podcast powered by KSLSports.com.